Author opinion of Dennis Keane at the history, geography and architecture, culture and life manners of Kazakhs in the program Discovering Kazakhstan.
Salam, privet, and hello. I'm Dennis Keane, and today on Discovering Kazakhstan, we will be discovering the former city of Chimkent. This sunny southern city is known for its shashlik barbecue and its generous hospitality. And ever since independence, it's been known as Chimkent. But under Soviet rule, because of a certain Russian spelling rule, its name started with Chim. It was during these Soviet years that the city grew tremendously. And it's this era in particular that often interests foreign visitors like me. There's still plenty of 20th century history left here to explore, so come along as we go back to the USSR. My guide today to Soviet Chimkent is an old friend of mine, Dana, who, though she was born after the fall of the Soviet Union, spent her entire life in this beautiful city and is fascinated by this era. Hey, Dana.
Hi, Dennis.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So where are we right now?
We are at the Ordabasi Square by the Independence Monument, as you can see.
Yeah, I saw this beautiful monument here, and this hasn't been here for long, actually.
That's true.
Yeah. And all around Chimkent, there are all these new parks and monuments. But behind all of this modernity, there's this fascinating history that's waiting to be discovered.
True.
I know we have that kind of interest in common. So when I was standing here waiting for you, I saw there's this really neat old building over there. Do you know what that is?
I think it used to be Aral restaurant.
Do you want to go check it out?
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's go.
Well, you know, what caught my eye about this building was its bright turquoise color.
Yeah, I think the bright colors are very, very common in Chimkent. You can see some blue, yellow, and even pink buildings here.
It's nice. It kind of lifts your mood. We don't really have anything like this in America. Usually it's like gray or brown or something simple, but it has a lot of character.
Yeah, I guess it sets the mood of the city as well.
It is a bright city.
Yeah.
People here are very warm. And it's funny, even if you look here, you can see underneath, it was once yellow. Maybe it was pink before.
Yeah, another bright color, as you can see.
Layers of history there. Wow, how neat is this?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. As you can see here, these ones are ram horns, which are very common in our traditional ornaments here.
And then it's kind of mixed in here with these classic ornaments. So here we have this kind of classic vase. up there, look at this thing. See that?
Yeah.
In English, this is called a festoon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a kind of wreath that's hanging down there with some apples. And I think this is what's fascinating about this this era of Soviet architecture. Is they kind of mix two cultures, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
There's the Kazakh ornament, there's classical ornament.
Yeah, the classical one.
And this was particularly popular in the post-war years. So I bet you that this building is from the 1950s.
That's true. Could be that old.
It could be that old. Well, it looks that old.
It does.
So we're back in Wardabasa Square.
Which is the beginning of our main streets in the city, Kazakh B. It was previously called Soviet Street.
Perfect. And actually, I heard that Soviet Street has a lot of old Soviet buildings that are still there.
Yeah, it does, it's true. And even here, one of the first two buildings are one of the oldest. And the interesting thing is that they still keep the same purpose.
All these years.
Yeah.
So this one over here is still a hotel.
Yes, it is
called
a hotel.
the Hotel Wardabasa. And then over here, we have the Univermag.
Yeah, which is a department store in Russian.
Store.
Yeah.
And they both still have these bright colors that we saw before, right?
True, true. Very bright blue color and a bright pink.
It's cute. It's nice. It's warm, just like Shymkent. So why don't we see what we can find along Soviet Street? We'll take a little walk.
Let's go.
This huge building really is dominating the street here. Something tells me it's something historic.
Yeah, it is Shamsher Kaldayakov Regional Philharmonic right now. The building itself was built even before the Soviet Union. It was built in 1881, and it used to be a church.
It was actually a church before.
Yeah, it was actually a church.
If you look at it now, you wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
So then it changed.
Yeah, and during the Soviet Union times, it changed to a philharmonic, which is, it still is right now.
So they have a kind of orchestra here that plays Kazakh music, some classical music.
Yeah, a lot of concerts as well of our singers happen here.
Okay. But if you were to look at it, you wouldn't think it was a church. You wouldn't think it was even that old. I guess they must have done some renovation recently, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe let's go have a look inside. Maybe we can get an idea of what it once felt like.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Kaldayakov. Does that mean what I think it means?
Yeah. Kaldayakov, translating from Kazakh language, means having a mole on
your foot.
On your foot, yes, and that's exactly what he had, and his father had too. He was such a good composer. He even composed his name.
Shamsher Molefoot.
Yeah, if you would translate it from Yeah, Kazakh.
It's definitely creative. And he was a creative guy. He also composed what is now the national anthem, right?
Yes, that was in 1956.
So this 1956 Soviet time, this kid from Shymkent composes what is now the national anthem of Kazakhstan.
At that time I think he was aiming for some patriotic song about the country, and after our independence they made it our anthem.
Now everybody throughout the land sings this song.
Oh, and he is Shamshik himself.
Shemshik Koldayakov.
Koldayakov, yes.
It's a nice little bust. Handsome guy, the pride of Shymkent.
The pride of whole Kazakhstan.
Because he wrote the national anthem.
True.
Yeah. And so he was born in 1930, and you told me that he wrote that anthem in 1956.
56, yes. Which means he was what, like 26 years old when he wrote the anthem.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I'm only 28 and I haven't written any national anthems yet. Maybe I'll write the next one of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, maybe.
And it says he's the king of Kazakh waltz.
Yeah, that's very true, because in many of his songs you can really see the style of waltz.
So he kind of mixed some Kazakh melodies with European style.
True.
Cool, just like this church actually.
Yes.
And now the Philharmonic. So what's this one over here, Donna?
It's also one of the oldest buildings on this street. I believe it was built in 1938, and it used to be in Soviet times. It used to be headquarters of the Communist Party.
The Communist Party right here on Soviet Street.
Exactly, exactly. And don't you feel how busy the street is? And I think it was the same, you know, back then.
Yeah, because nowadays there's so many other major boulevards that they built in Shymkent, but this is actually where, this was the center of that Soviet city of Shymkent.
Yes.
Now, I couldn't help but notice on this side of the street, there's what apparently is a famous icon of Shymkent, the red tractor. Do you want to go look at that?
Yeah, let's look at that.
So this is it, the famous red tractor.
Yeah, Kızıl Tractor of Shymkent.
And so why is there a tractor here along the street?
Well, this is the tractor that was actually used in the fields in 30s and 50s, and it was given to the museum.
So this used to be a museum right behind here.
Exactly.
And it says it was here that it was given in 1978. So already it's been standing here for almost 40 years. And even before that, they used it in the fields for decades. So this is a real artifact from the Soviet Union. And it doesn't get much more Soviet than that, the red tractor, the red color of communism on a symbol of communist labor.
And there's even a famous art collective group in Shymkent, which named themselves after this red tractor.
So this tractor is actually very important to Soviet Shymkent and to the modern day. So the whole reason why this tractor is here is that this used to be a regional history museum, right?
True. Yeah.
And now across the street we have another bright pink building,
Which is a post office. I think it was a post office ever since it was built in 1936.
so it's really kept to its original purpose. And that it was built in 1936 tells me something, because back then they were building in a style called constructivism. And if you look at it, it's not like those fancy buildings that we saw before. It's very, very minimal. And constructivism was this avant-garde movement that was especially popular in the 1930s. There are not a lot of buildings like this that are left in Shymkent, so this is actually quite a gem, and that it stayed a post office this entire time is truly remarkable.
not that many local people know that this was a Communist Party building.
This was too?
Yeah, it was. And in the 60s, they made it a hospital.
And so it's still a hospital today,
It is,
right?
yes.
So when was it built?
In 1938.
So that's interesting, because that was kind of the end of this constructivist architecture, and then they started to build, again, this kind of neoclassical style. And to this day, you can see those big columns still remain. Well, now that I know that it's a hospital, it makes sense that they have this interesting statue out front. Because when I first came to Kazakhstan, in front of every pharmacy, you would see this bowl with a snake wrapped around it. Did you know what this is?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they call it the Bowl of Hygeia, and it's a kind of ancient symbol of medicine. Now, there's something a little bit different though about this one, isn't there?
Yeah, what did you notice? Do you see anything familiar on this one here?
Ram's horns everywhere.
And this time they put the actual ram on it, as you can see.
Yeah, right underneath a big Kazakh-style kazan, this large iron cooking vessel that Kazakhs use to make traditional dishes. This is awesome. I love these old Soviet mosaics.
Yeah, it's one of our beautiful mosaics we have in Shymkent. It's on the wall of school gym.
And if you look at it, I'm trying to figure out what is in that picture. It looks like they are planting a tree.
It's a family. There's a child, there's a younger one in mother's hands.
And it's kind of funny that they're planting a tree because actually we're on the very edge of the central park of Shymkent, and they've planted some trees here as well. Now, what's a shame is that the mosaic is kind of falling apart a little bit.
Yeah, and there are even some little parts, little tiles you can see.
Right here at the bottom. So if you come down to the bottom of the mosaic, you can find these little tiles. Look at this. So these little squares are what they would use in these Soviet mosaics. They're called smalta. It's a kind of glazed glass that the Soviets really mastered the production of. And there are thousands of these beautiful, beautiful mosaics that you can find all throughout the Soviet Union. But Shymkent, I think, is especially rich in this kind of public art.
So we are in Abai's park now, which was the biggest park in Soviet Shymkent.
It was big, and when I look at old maps, you can actually find old names for this place. So before it was called Komsomol Park, which was the name of the old communist youth organization. It was called the Park of 50 Years of the October Revolution. But now it has a name, I think, more relevant to most modern Kazakhs. It's named after Abai, the most famous of all Kazakh writers.
And one of the biggest parts of this park is this war memorial. Would you like to take a look at it?
Is it why there's a big airplane right here in the sky? Yeah, let's go look. I mean, it's striking to see a big plane like that in the middle of a park. There's planes and tanks and all sorts of different weapons that you can find in Abai Park.
And this monument here is dedicated to pilots who fought in the war.
And all along here, there's names to all different kinds of soldiers, right, who fought in World War II.
And actually, my great-grandfather's name is listed here as well.
Really? What's his last name?
His last name is Nishanbayev, so we can find him over there.
Yeah, he's right there. I mean, that's really remarkable when you look at it. You see these thousands of names, and you imagine that for each one of these names, there's some kind of personal connection, some family member like there is for Donna.
final part of this war memorial would be this Monument of Glory. It is dedicated to the soldiers who fought in the war.
I see here in the middle there's this eternal flame constantly burning in memory of those who were lost in World War II, and these very impressive spires reaching out into the sky. They really remind us just how important this war was to the Soviet Union and how it affected almost everybody who lived in this country.
Yeah, and people do remember their relatives every year for 9th of May, which is Victory Day for us. Yes, people bring flowers for their to remember the soldiers, their relatives who fought in the war.
So it's something that people really do keep in their hearts, and they really do honor the veterans who served in this war.
So Dennis, we're on Kaldyakov Street now, which is the main street for what we call Metallurgy Village. And we have another statue of Shamsha Kaldyakov here. And he even used to live in this very building.
He lived here. And what an unusual statue we have here, really unlike I've ever seen before in Kazakhstan. I can see what respect people have for Kaldyakov. After all, he was the author of the national anthem, which you can see written on the building here. The neighborhood where he lived, this Metallurgy Village, is really interesting for me. I've wanted to come here for a long time because this is one of the oldest neighborhoods in all of Shymkent, and there's a lot of beautiful old residential architecture. So do you want to go take a look at that?
Let's go.
Let's go. I just love being in these kind of historic neighborhoods with old buildings and big trees. So this is what we were looking for. This is Metallurgy Village.
Correct, yes. They've opened up a factory, a lead factory here in 1930s, and they started to build different houses for
the workers.
Factory workers, yes. And these houses here were built a little bit later in 1946 approximately, I guess.
And so they're really quite old, but what really warms my heart is seeing that they have taken some kind of graffiti artists and they've totally decorated the buildings. And they look amazing. These buildings are, you know, more than what, 70 years old. And look over here, for example, we can see it's been covered in these bright red poppies, and then with some depictions of Kazakh petroglyphs, some kind of stone drawings, like we can see around Almaty, around Shymkent. So what did they do all these paintings for? I
think these particular paintings were made for a special festival, which is called Shymkent Art Days. And I guess this is what they've done. And
well, I can only hope that in the future they have more festivals and decorate more buildings, because if more of these kind of historic neighborhoods got this same kind of love, then I'm sure lots of tourists would come and explore this really neat Soviet history.
This is also one of the famous buildings of this district, actually. It's a art and design college.
Well, I can see that it's old. I mean, it's probably around from the 1950s. It's got this very classic design. I can also see that it's an art school because the students are very creative. They put some kind of sculptures here out front. Huh? Hey! Hello! Can you hear me? Well, what a lovely little corner of the neighborhood we found here.
True, and right across the street here we have the Metallurgist Palace of Culture, which was built in 1957.
The Palace of Culture. This sounds kind of funny to a lot of Western viewers because when we think of palace, we think of a place where a king or a queen might live. But palaces of cultures were built all over the Soviet Union as a kind of assembly hall, a kind of community center where people could meet and celebrate different holidays. And now we can see that this Palace of Culture has been very well restored as a private university. What's great is that such beautiful kind of neoclassical architecture has been painted, has been taken care of. This is the most we could ask for a historic building like this in Chimkent. Well, after exploring the Metallurgist Village, we finally arrived in the neighborhood gem. It's the Metallurgist Park. And Donna, just look at these trees, they're amazing.
Yeah, most of the trees in this park were planted in 1950s, and there are more than 1,000 of them right now in this park. They are pretty old, but they still keep them and they don't cut them.
I mean, that's really special because there aren't a lot of green spaces like this in modern day cities, and this one's really been well taken care of. It's a great place to walk, I think, and think about the history of Chimkent. Well, I couldn't think of a better place to end a tour of Soviet Chimkent than with the statue of Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union. This statue once stood in the city's central square, which was called Lenin Square, and since independence, it's been moved to the Park of Metallurgists. So I guess that's our tour, Donna. Thank you so much for showing us around.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
And thank you for joining us today on Discovering Kazakhstan. I'm Dennis Keen. Until next time, Saubol, Maka, and goodbye.